Chapter 9. About that time came Antiochus with dishonor out of the country of Persia, for he had entered the city called Persepolis, and went about to rob the temple, and to hold the city. Whereupon the multitude running to defend themselves with their weapons put them to flight. And so it happened, that Antiochus being put to flight of the inhabitants returned with shame. Now when he came to Ecbatana, news was brought him what had happened unto Nicanor and Timotheus. Then swelling with anger, he thought to avenge upon the Jews the disgrace done unto him by those that made him fly. Therefore commanded he his chariotman to drive without ceasing, and to dispatch the journey, the judgment of God now following him. For he had spoken proudly in this sort, that he would come to Jerusalem, and make it a common burying place of the Jews. But the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, smote him with an incurable and invisible plague. For as soon as he had spoken these words, a pain of the bowels that was remediless came upon him, and sore torments of the inner parts, and that most justly, for he had tormented other men's bowels with many and strange torments. Howbeit he nothing at all ceased from his bragging, but still was filled with pride, breathing out fire in his rage against the Jews, and commanding to haste the journey. But it came to pass that he fell down from his chariot, carried violently, so that having a sore fall, all the members of his body were much pained. And thus he that a little afore thought he might command the waves of the sea, so proud was he beyond the condition of man, and weigh the high mountains in a balance, was now cast on the ground, and carried in a horse litter, showing forth unto all the manifest power of God. So that the worms rose up out of the body of this wicked man, and whilst he lived in sorrow and pain, his flesh fell away, and the filthiness of his smell was noisome to all his army. And the man that thought a little afore he could reach to the stars of heaven, no man could endure to carry for his intolerable stink. Here therefore, being plagued, he began to leave off his great pride, and to come to the knowledge of himself by the scourge of God, his pain increasing every moment. And when he himself could not abide his own smell, he said these words, It is meet to be subject unto God, and that a man that is mortal should not proudly think of himself, as if he were God. This wicked person vowed also unto the Lord, who now no more would have mercy upon him, saying thus, that the holy city, to the which he was going in haste, to lay it even with the ground, and to make it a common burying place, he would set at liberty. And as touching the Jews, whom he had judged not worthy so much as to be buried, but to be cast out with their children to be devoured of the fowls and wild beasts, he would make them all equals to the citizens of Athens. And the holy temple, which before he had spoiled, he would garnish with goodly gifts, and restore all the holy vessels with many more, and out of his own revenue defray the charges belonging to the sacrifices. Yea, and that also he would become a Jew himself, and go through all the world that was inhabited, and declare the power of God. But for all this his pains would not cease, for the just judgment of God was come upon him. Therefore, despairing of his health, he wrote unto the Jews the letter underwritten, containing the form of a supplication after this manner. Antiochus, king and governor, to the good Jews his citizens, wisheth much joy, health, and prosperity. If ye and your children fare well, and your affairs be to your contentment, I give very great thanks to God, having my hope in heaven. As for me, I was weak, or else I would have remembered kindly your honor and good will. Returning out of Persia, and being taken with a grievous disease, I thought it necessary to care for the common safety of all, not distrusting my health, but having great hope to escape this sickness. But considering that even my father, at what time he led an army into the high countries, appointed a successor, to the end that if anything fell out contrary to expectation, or if any tidings were brought that were grievous, they of the land, knowing to whom the state was left, might not be troubled. Again, considering how that the princes that are borderers and neighbors unto my kingdom wait for opportunities, and expect what shall be the event, I have appointed my son Antiochus king, whom I often committed and commended unto many of you, when I went up into the high provinces, to whom I have written as followeth. Therefore, I pray and request you to remember the benefits that I have done unto you generally, and in special, and that every man will be still faithful to me and my son. For I am persuaded that he, understanding my mind, will favorably and graciously yield to your desires. Thus the murderer and blasphemer having suffered most grievously, as he entreated other men, so died he a miserable death in a strange country in the mountains. And Philip, that was brought up with him, carried away his body, who also fearing the son of Antiochus, went into Egypt to Ptolemy Philometor. Chapter 10. Now Maccabeus and his company, the Lord guiding them, recovered the temple and the city, but the altars which the heathen had built in the open street, and also the chapels they pulled down, and having cleansed the temple, they made another altar, and striking stones, they took fire out of them, and offered a sacrifice after 2 years, and set forth incense and lights and showbread. When that was done, they fell flat down, and besought the Lord that they might come no more into such troubles, but if they sinned any more against him, that he himself would chasten them with mercy, and that they might not be delivered unto the blasphemous and barbarous nations. Now upon the same day that the strangers profaned the temple, on the very same day it was cleansed again, even the 25th day of the same month, which is Caslu. And they kept 8 days with gladness, as in the Feast of the Tabernacles, remembering that not long afore they had held the Feast of the Tabernacles, when as they wandered in the mountains and dens like beasts. Therefore they bore branches, and fair boughs, and palms also, and sang psalms, unto him that had given them good success in cleansing his place. They ordained also by a common statute and decree, that every year those days should be kept of the whole nation of the Jews. And this was the end of Antiochus, called Epiphanes. Now will we declare the acts of Antiochus Eupator, who is the son of this wicked man, gathering briefly the calamities of the wars. So when he was come to the crown, he set one Lysias over the affairs of his realm, and appointed him chief governor of Coelo-Syria and Phoenice. For Ptolemy, that was called Macron, choosing rather to do justice unto the Jews for the wrong that had been done unto them, endeavored to continue peace with them. Whereupon, being accused of the king's friends before Eupator, and called traitor at every word, because he had left Cyprus, that Philometor had committed unto him, and departed to Antiochus Epiphanes, and seeing that he was in no honorable place, he was so discouraged that he poisoned himself and died. But when Georgius was governor of the holds, he hired soldiers, and nourished war continually with the Jews, and therewithal the Idumeans, having gotten into their hands the most commodious holds, kept the Jews occupied, and receiving those that were banished from Jerusalem, they went about to nourish war. Then they that were with Maccabeus made supplication, and besought God that he would be their helper. And so they ran with violence upon the strongholds of the Idumeans, and assaulting them strongly, they won the holds, and kept off all that fought upon the wall, and slew all that fell into their hands, and killed no fewer than 20,000. And because certain, who were no less than 9,000, were fled together into 2 very strong castles, having all manner of things convenient to sustain the siege, Maccabeus left Simon, and Joseph, and Zacchaeus also, and them that were with him, who were enough to besiege them, and departed himself unto those places which more needed his help. Now they that were with Simon, being led with covetousness, were persuaded for money, through certain of those that were in the castle, and took 70,000 drachms, and let some of them escape. But when it was told Maccabeus what was done, he called the governors of the people together, and accused those men, that they had sold their brethren for money, and set their enemies free to fight against them. So he slew those that were found traitors, and immediately took the 2 castles. And having good success with his weapons in all things he took in hand, he slew in the 2 holds more than 20,000. Now Timotheus, whom the Jews had overcome before, when he had gathered a great multitude of foreign forces, and horses out of Asia, not a few, came as though he would take Jewry by force of arms. But when he drew near, they that were with Maccabeus turned themselves to pray unto God, and sprinkled earth upon their heads, and girded their loins with sackcloth, and fell down at the foot of the altar, and besought him to be merciful to them, and to be an enemy to their enemies, and an adversary to their adversaries, as the law declareth. So after the prayer, they took their weapons, and went on farther from the city, and when they drew near to their enemies, they kept by themselves. Now the sun being newly risen, they joined both together, the one part having together with their virtue their refuge also unto the Lord for a pledge of their success and victory, the other side making their rage leader of their battle. But when the battle waxed strong, there appeared unto the enemies from heaven 5 comely men upon horses, with bridles of gold, and 2 of them led the Jews, and took Maccabeus betwixt them, and covered him on every side with their weapons, and kept him safe, but shot arrows and lightnings against the enemies, so that being confounded with blindness, and full of trouble, they were killed. And there were slain of footmen 20,500, and 600 horsemen. As for Timotheus himself, he fled into a very strong hold, called Gazara, where Carius was governor. But they that were with Maccabeus laid siege against the fortress courageously 4 days. And they that were within, trusting to the strength of the place, blasphemed exceedingly, and uttered wicked words. Nevertheless, upon the 5th day, early, 20 young men of Maccabeus' company, inflamed with anger because of the blasphemies, assaulted the wall manly, and with a fierce courage killed all that they met withal. Others likewise ascending after them, whilst they were busied with them that were within, burnt the towers, and kindling fires burnt the blasphemers alive, and others broke open the gates, and, having received in the rest of the army, took the city, and killed Timotheus that was hid in a certain pit, and Charias his brother, with Apollophanes. When this was done, they praised the Lord with psalms and thanksgiving, who had done so great things for Israel, and given them the victory. Chapter 11. Not long after this, Lysias, the king's protector and cousin, who also managed the affairs, took sore displeasure for the things that were done. And when he had gathered about 80,000 with all the horsemen, he came against the Jews, thinking to make the city a habitation of the Gentiles, and to make a gain of the temple, as of the other chapels of the heathen, and to set the high priesthood to sale every year, not at all considering the power of God, but puffed up with his 10,000 footmen, and his 1,000 horsemen, and his 80 elephants. So he came to Judea, and drew near to Bethsura, which was a strong town, but distant from Jerusalem about 5 furlongs, and he laid sore siege unto it. Now when they that were with Maccabeus heard that he besieged the holds, they and all the people with lamentation and tears besought the Lord that he would send a good angel to deliver Israel. Then Maccabeus himself first of all took weapons, exhorting the others that they would jeopard themselves together with him, help their brethren. So they went forth together with a willing mind. And as they were at Jerusalem, there appeared before them on horseback one in white clothing, shaking his armor of gold. Then they praised the merciful God altogether, and took heart, insomuch that they were ready not only to fight with men, but with most cruel beasts, and to pierce through walls of iron. Thus they marched forward in their armor, having a helper from heaven, for the Lord was merciful unto them. And giving a charge upon their enemies like lions, they slew 11,000 footmen, and 1,600 horsemen, and put all the others to flight. Many of them also being wounded escaped naked, and Lysias himself fled away shamefully, and so escaped. Who, as he was a man of understanding, casting with himself what loss he had had, and considering that the Hebrews could not be overcome, because the Almighty God helped them, he sent unto them, and persuaded them to agree to all reasonable conditions, and promised that he would persuade the king that he must needs be a friend unto them. Then Maccabeus consented to all that Lysias desired, being careful of the common good. And whatsoever Maccabeus wrote unto Lysias concerning the Jews, the king granted it. For there were letters written unto the Jews from Lysias to this effect: Lysias unto the people of the Jews sendeth greeting. John and Absalom, who were sent from you, delivered me the petition subscribed, and made request for the performance of the contents thereof. Therefore what things soever were meet to be reported to the king, I have declared them, and he hath granted as much as might be. If then you will keep yourselves loyal to the state, hereafter also will I endeavor to be a means of your good. But of the particulars I have given order both to these, and the others that came from me, to commune with you. Fare ye well, the 148th year, the 24th day of the month Dioscorinthius. Now the king's letter contained these words: King Antiochus unto his brother Lysias sendeth greeting. Since our father is translated unto the gods, our will is that they that are in our realm live quietly, that everyone may attend upon his own affairs. We understand also that the Jews would not consent to our father for to be brought unto the custom of the Gentiles, but had rather keep their own manner of living. For the which cause they require of us, that we should suffer them to live after their own laws. Wherefore our mind is, that this nation shall be in rest, and we have determined to restore them their temple, that they may live according to the customs of their forefathers. Thou shalt do well therefore to send unto them, and grant them peace, that when they are certified of our mind, they may be of good comfort, and ever go cheerfully about their own affairs. And the letter of the king unto the nation of the Jews was after this manner: King Antiochus sendeth greeting unto the council, and the rest of the Jews. If ye fare well, we have our desire. We are also in good health. Menelaus declared unto us that your desire was to return home, and to follow your own business. Wherefore they that will depart shall have safe conduct till the 30th day of Xanthicus with security. And the Jews shall use their own kind of meats and laws, as before, and none of them any manner of ways shall be molested for things ignorantly done. I have sent also Menelaus, that he may comfort you. Fare ye well, in the 148th year, and the 15th day of the month Xanthicus. The Romans also sent unto them a letter containing these words: Quintus Memmius and Titus Manlius, ambassadors of the Romans, send greeting unto the people of the Jews. Whatsoever Lysias the king's cousin hath granted, therewith we also are well pleased. But touching such things as he judged to be referred to the king, after you have advised thereof, send one forthwith, that we may declare it as convenient for you. For we are now going to Antioch. Therefore send some with speed, that we may know what is your mind. Farewell, this 148th year, the 15th day of the month Xanthicus.
Matthew chapter 26. When Jesus had finished saying all these things, he said to his disciples, "As you know, the Passover is 2 days away, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified." Then the chief priests and the elders of the people assembled in the palace of the high priest, whose name was Caiaphas, and they schemed to arrest Jesus secretly and kill him. But not during the festival, they said, or there may be a riot among the people. While Jesus was in Bethany, in the home of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which she poured on his head as he was reclining at the table. When the disciples saw this, they were indignant. "Why this waste?" they asked. "This perfume could have been sold at a high price and the money given to the poor." Aware of this, Jesus said to them, "Why are you bothering this woman? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, but you will not always have me. When she poured this perfume on my body, she did it to prepare me for burial. Truly I tell you, wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her." Then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asked, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you?" So they counted out for him 30 pieces of silver. From then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over. On the first day of the festival of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Where do you want us to make preparations for you to eat the Passover?" He replied, "Go into the city to a certain man and tell him, 'The teacher says, my appointed time is near. I'm going to celebrate the Passover with my disciples at your house.'" So the disciples did as Jesus had directed them and prepared the Passover.
I love Karina. Tell the world I do. I love Karina. Tell the world I do. I pray every night. See them to love me too. Karina, Karina. Karina, Karina. Karina, Karina, I love you so. Oh, little darling, where you been so long? Oh, little darling, where you been so long? I had no loving since you've been gone. Karina, 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 I love you so. I left Karina way across the sea.